searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night's so cold, feelings buried, stories untold. The gurus chime a distant call, her anklets sing, rise, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night's so cold, feelings buried, stories untold. Can you hear it, the voice within? A song of loss where love begins. Her anklets sing a pull from silence deep, new ones are born. Peacocks cry in the storm's embrace, clouds that gather leave no trace. Dreams like bangles shattered, worn from silence deep, new ones are born. They shift, they sway the wind, but whispers, don't you stay. A count, shadows stretched so long, footsteps fade, where do I belong? Oh, heart of my mind, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night's so cold, feelings buried, stories untold. Don't you stay, the stars they glimmer, speak of pain. Each grain of sand knows my name. Can you hear it, the voice within? A song of loss where love begins. Oh, heart of my mind, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night's so cold, feelings buried, stories untold. Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night's so cold, feelings buried, stories untold. The gurus chime a distant call, her anklets sing, rise, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night's so cold, feelings buried, stories untold. Can you hear it, the voice within? A song of loss where love begins. Her anklets sing a pull from silence deep, new ones are born. Peacocks cry in the storm's embrace, clouds that gather leave no trace. Dreams like bangles shattered, worn from silence deep, new ones are born. They shift, they sway the wind, but whispers, don't you stay. A count, shadows stretched so long, footsteps fade, where do I belong? Oh, heart of my mind, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night's
Hi everyone. We are going to begin our segment 2 in about 10 minutes time. We've completed our segment 1 this morning with amazing speakers and amazing panel members. We're going to be going to segment 2 with another panel member, a set of panel members as well as speakers. We're going to come in and share thoughts around this Global Workplace Wellbeing Summit 2026. So stay tuned. If you're already here, please wait for about 10 minutes and we'll get started. We've also got a very lovely surprise for you from one of our members. Once they join in, we'll be able to showcase it. But 10 more minutes.
A song of loss where love begins. Heart of my mind, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. Heart of mine, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. The gurus chime a distant call. Her anklets sing, rise, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. Can you hear it, the voice within? A song of loss where love begins. Her anklets sing a poem from silence deep. New ones are born. Peacocks cry in the storm's embrace. Clouds that gather leave no trace. Dreams like bangles shattered, worn from silence deep. New ones are born. A thousand doomsday shift, they sway the wind. Whispers, don't you stay. A count shadows stretched so long. Footsteps fade, where do I belong? Oh, heart of my mind, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. The cuckoo's chime a distant call. Her anklets sing, rise, don't you stay. The stars they glimmer, speak of pain. Each grain of sand, it knows my name. Can you hear it, the voice within? A song of loss where love begins. Heart of my mind, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. Heart of mine, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. The gurus chime a distant call. Her anklets sing, rise, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. Can you hear it, the voice warm. From silence deep, new ones are born. A thousand doomsday shifts sway the wind. Whispers, don't you stay. A count of shadows stretched so long. Footsteps fade, where do I belong? Oh, heart of my mind, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. The cuckoo's chime a distant call. Her anklets sing, rise, don't you stay. The stars they glimmer, speak of pain. Each grain of sand knows my name. Can you hear it, the voice within? A song of loss where love begins. Oh, heart of my mind, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. Oh, heart of mine, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. The gungroos chime a distant call. Her anklets sing, rise, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. Can you hear it, the voice within? A song of loss where love begins. Her anklets sing a pull from silence deep. New ones are born. Peacocks cry in the storm's embrace. Clouds that gather leave no trace. Dreams like bangles shattered, worn. From silence deep, new ones are born. A thousand doomsday shifts sway the wind. Whispers, don't you stay. A count of shadows stretched so long. Footsteps fade, where do I belong? Oh, heart of my mind, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Depends on wherever you are. We have finished the first segment this morning, according to the Indian Standard Time, of course, this morning. I would now like to call upon one of our speakers from this morning to give us a quick recap from all the thoughts and the discussions that were inspired, well, inspiring discussions. And we were inspired. That's what I wanted to say. Tara?
Yeah, thanks, Shivani. Thanks a lot. For those of you who do not know me, again, I am Tara. I am based out of India, Mumbai. And I'm a psychologist and I work with one of the big fours here for South Asia, and I manage their mental health portfolio. And I'm here to recap what we gathered as insights from the previous one. If I had to sum it up really simply, we started to realize while our discussions were happening, we started to realize that well-being isn't an initiative on the side. It's more of how work feels on a regular day, the pace, the expectations, the kind of conversations that people are able to have. Um, a lot that came up was psychological safety. When people feel comfortable speaking up or saying anything that isn't working, things tend to get addressed earlier, and when it's missing, issues clearly build up and very quietly, and at the end, we all know how it turns out to be, which is not quite healthy for any of us. And a lot of this connects back to the leadership behavior in general, not in a big dramatic way, but in everyday actions. How leaders respond when they prioritize, and what they let slide. So that tends to shape how people experience the culture more than the policies do, sorry. And so overall key takeaways, it isn't about adding more initiatives to what we already are doing. I think a lot of us are doing a lot of things in our current organizations as freelancers, as consultants. We're trying to make things work as they are, but the point is to rebuild and restructure the entire functioning of how things are, instead of changing ourselves and modify our behavior. So let's just rebuild, and it's more about consistency. So let's keep trying doing that, and it will gradually influence culture and policies both. That were a few key takeaways from the previous session.
Thank you so much, Tara. And I think one acronym that Dr. Brilliant came up with
Yes,
was MS.
LMS.
And if you want to know the full form of LMS, I highly encourage you to go back and watch the previous segment because I'm not telling you. But thank you so much, Tara. So that moves on to, let's move on to our segment number two. And this segment, I think, again asks uncomfortable questions, which I'm super excited about as always because I love uncomfortable questions. The first one we're going to start off with, and I'm going to invite and pull in our speakers who are already here with us, is why is well-being still treated as an HR initiative instead of leadership responsibility? Earlier, we did talk about those three aspects, which is either is it leadership, culture, or policies, and we were trying to sort of see which one is maybe a little more responsible in this front. And I think the word that really stood out was leadership. So here we go again. I think similar question for segment two group of speakers here. If I have to make this question really uncomfortable and I put my jazz into it, it would be something like if, let's say, in your organization tomorrow, well-being, whatever is it, a program, whatever it is, the element of well-being disappeared, would the leadership even notice, or would the HR just notice, right? So again, why is well-being still treated as an HR initiative and not a leadership responsibility? I would like to now pull in our lovely speakers here. So please bear with me. All right. Requesting our speakers to keep your cameras on so that as soon as I toggle you on, your camera is on and you are live. Perfect. All right, lovely. I think it's still loading. So all right, perfect. Thank you so much, Tara, for that quick recap, and we'll come right to you for continuing this segment further. All right. Yes, this is a very interesting question. And welcome to our speakers. So this is how it's going to go for this segment. Each one of you, of course, I want to hear all of your thoughts. So we're going to go around, sort of, please introduce yourself, one line and so on. And then tell us a little bit about yourself, and then tell us your thoughts regarding this. But I would now like to actually bring in one of you forward so that we also set the tone, literally, quite literally, the tone for this segment. And she is right here with us. That is Sunita. You can hear at the back end, she's got something for us to start this segment off with, and it's super creative. So, Sunita, I'd like to give it off to you first.
Thank you, Shivani, and it's so wonderful to see all of you. And I just like the format of a conference without presentations. But somehow I have my weapon and my tool with me. And obviously, well-being is not just about what happens across the organization; it's also what happens with each one of us internally. And hence, I would like to set the tone with the tool that I use for well-being, which is using the arts, using the lessons of the art world, using the togetherness of arts, the creativity, the aesthetics of arts, to not just create better, positive engagements, but also to heal internally. So I'd like to start by saying that sound and music is a science. It gives us healthy hormones, endorphins, dopamine. It also gives us serotonin and oxytocin if we share it with each one of you. So I thought if it's a well-being conference, I would like to probably cheat a little bit and use my tool, which is the violin. And also, well-being happens when we are very free and very confident of who we are. And I'm currently in the northeast of India, in Assam, my home state, and spring is near. So I'd like to wish all of you that let there be spring always in our lives, inside us and outside us. And hence, I'd like to start with a local Assamese folk piece to wish you a beautiful spring and a beautiful year ahead. Can you hear the strum of the violin, Shivani? Can you hear? Great. Sapai buguli sore khomoniya oy sapai buguli sore যৌবনৰ পুৰণি সহিব নোৱাৰো ঐ সুকে খুন্দা মাৰি ধৰে It's a global well-being conference. Let's the universal seven notes like humanity, love, and kindness is universal. Hence, with the same violin and the same Assamese folk rhythm, I can also move into a Scottish rhythm because the world is one. Well, a Scottish reel with an Indian Northeastern Assamese folk rhythm. Music is universal, love and kindness in humanity is universal, and that's the basis of well being, my dear friends. Thank you, Shivani. Thanks for letting me start this session.
Wow, I don't know what to say. Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Sunita. That was brilliant. I have no words. But what a great start to our segment and so creative. That is the meaning of well being. You really energized me, I must say. I think I was feeling a little low after lunch, but now I'm okay. You've really brought me back up. All right. Now, please stay for the conversation that we're going to have. This time we'll use words as well. And we'd love to hear your thoughts. So we're coming to this segment now. All right. Hard hitting questions, everybody. Hard hitting questions. All right. I think all of you are here. Yes. Just checking. Perfect. If your camera is off, then you will not be seen. All right. All right. Okay. Okay, speakers. And as I was saying from my previous segment, I want to correct myself and let the audience know that the members that continuously come today for the summit are not just speakers. Of course, they're really good with the way they communicate and their words and their language and everything, but they're actual experts who have gone into organizational well being and really gone and experienced some things. And here they're just sharing insights. So they're not just speakers, they're action takers. I think we came up with different words like change makers, intervention people, all kinds of different vocab. So we don't just have speakers in front of us, we have experts as well. All right. So why is well-being still treated as an HR initiative was the question that we want to start with. I'd like to start by hearing from. I love this now. Season segment one, I've been trained to call out names. I think Helen, shall we start with you?
Thank you. It's amazing to be here. I think I'm here because I'm an author about psychological safety in practice. And for me, psychological safety is 5 foundations and 15 practices. So in my work, I've been moving away from it being a fabulous concept, but how do you do it, to what do team leaders and HR practitioners actually need to do. But to go back to your question, why is it feels like it's led by I think it's 2 things. Belief that we can change and create psychological safety by introducing programs. So if we believe that, it's therefore held by HR. And therefore it's also easier, isn't it? It's easier for HR to introduce programs than it is to change the behavior of every single manager, every single team leader in an organization. But I just want to share some data from this book. This is Happiness is a Serious Illness. And he lists these wellbeing programs that are typically done by HR departments. So resilience training, mindfulness, relaxation, time management, financial wellbeing, coaching for mental health, volunteering, introducing wellbeing apps, online coaching, sleep apps, and sleep events. And you might be thinking, what a fantastic list. If only our HR department did something like this, life would be better. But and he researched all of these. He refers to the program that did that, and none of those made any difference statistically to well-being or happiness in the workplace at all. So all the things that we think are going to help, the evidence says that they don't. And in fact, 2 of them, well, actually resilience training, was a negative effect on people's happiness and well-being, a negative effect on people's well-being. But you think, well, if we do resilience training organisation, surely things will be better. And the only thing that made a statistically significant positive difference was volunteering. So I think we don't understand really what makes a difference to well-being, and all those initiatives are not it. And it's easier to think that they do. Thank you.
I'd now like to pull in Prayag. Prayag, your thoughts on this?
Hi everyone. quickly to before I go and talk about my expertise, but a very close friend of mine said that Prayag, you're on the screen, please drink water. And I said, "Ki, I don't need water. But Sunita, when you started playing, it felt like a water and a relief for me. So thank you so much for that. Now to start about the expertise, the reason why I'm here, I'm a psychologist, and of course, like all of you, I've been one of the catalysts with my team member Shivani. And the reason why I'm here is because I have gained some knowledge from the industry that is one of the oldest industry in all the organizations and the things that we see around, and that is maritime. And I would like to bring this to everybody's notice. I'm sure that all of you are aware the recent crisis that is happening in shipping, right, left, center. One of the main reasons for that is we have mastered the whole operation part of shipping. We have mastered how to manage crisis for ships, but we have, along the way, left the idea of how we will manage the biggest operation, that is the human mind. And I feel that the reason why it is always mental health is always treated second in maritime is divided into multiple part, but I'll just give some pointers of it. One is it is an unintentional not a systemic error, it's an unintentional error, because mental health cannot be seen. Like if you see a dent on a ship, you will clearly know that, okay, this there might be a crisis, so let me quickly fix it. But when it comes to mental health, you cannot see it. So that's the problem number one, because of which it is treated as a second priority. The second point to it is it is a cultural issue too, because in shipping there is uh, a metaphor that has always been used by one of the master that I used to work with for this project. He used to say that, Prayag, when going get tough, the tough get going. And this mindset has changed so many perspective of seafarers that these guys are struggling, but they cannot reach out because they think if we start reaching out, people will start judging us. So it's a cultural issue of endurance. The third is the priority to operations, because of course they are spending billions of rupees to build a ship and to pay the masters. Hence, they think that this is the second priority for us. Last but not the least is the trap that actually says we cannot have a psychologist on board when you're traveling, or we cannot have a mental health expert when a sailor is sailing. So I think that's the reason why usually for maritime it is considered to be a second priority. Thank you so much, Shivani. Over to you.
I like how we went from HR initiative to second priority. So thank you so much, Prayag. I'd like to now hear from Isioma. If I'm not saying your name right, please correct me.
That was perfect, actually. Hi, everyone. My name is Isioma. I'm very excited about this conversation. That's because I have sat in many of these seats. I have been a senior HR leader, and I've had the opportunity of working with leaders across Africa and the Middle East. I have also led teams across the Middle East, and I've also been an employee, let me use that word, within an organization who suffered severely from burnout, landed in ICU, and led me to completely changing my life. And now I work with leaders and organizations to ensure that we're able to create sustainable success without sacrificing your health or the things that are important to you. So I understand what it is to sit in the HR seat, to sit in the leadership seat as well. And one of the things that I would say is traditionally, HR has been seen as the people function. And because it's been seen as the people function, a lot of leaders also associate it with being soft. So anything that is soft, it is attributed to HR, to people. And, I feel like well-being was also just sort of categorized as one of those soft things in the organization and handed over to HR. And so the way that HR has evolved over time and organizations have evolved over time has really been the reason why we see that well-being still sits with HR. It is seen as a people thing. Now, what we don't understand is that leaders need to start seeing people-related matters, whether it's well-being or engagement or whatever it is, as they taking ownership of the end to end of their people and of their talent as well. So if leaders begin to see that the way that I lead my team is end to end, it's not just performance only, it is what is the thing that is driving performance, we will begin to see shifts and changes. But unfortunately, like I say, it is still referred to as a soft matter, and so it is delegated. But we also don't understand, and what we are seeing over time is that the things that we term soft skills, soft related matters, are actually fundamental and foundational, because you cannot have sustainable performance in an organization without having sustainable people, people who are well, people who are strong, people who are not, we use the word resilient a lot, but people who are healthy. Having worked with leaders across many regions, the key thing is that we are dealing with human beings, and we need leaders to begin to see that the people you work with are not machines, but they are human beings, and that you are responsible for their well-being. So there's a research that was done by, I think it's Jen Fisher, and the research shows that what are the contributing factors to the outcome of well-being? 10% sits with the individual, 20% with team dynamics, 30% with leadership behavior, and 40% with organizational systems, which means that we're actually saying 90% leaders can influence 90% of the outcome of workplace well-being. So leaders, we need to also start, one of the things I think that we could do better at is, first of all, leaders need to start modeling this. And we need to stop seeing well-being as a soft issue. We need to start seeing it as a foundational issue. We need to stop seeing it as this nice to have. We need to start seeing it as the bedrock on which our organizations can actually lead and drive performance sustainably. As we got on the call, there's something I just wrote down quickly. I said, leaders drive culture and change. And we are talking about core cultural and change management conversations. So I will pause there so that I can hear and learn from other people as well.
Lovely. Thank you, Sioma. Moving on to Patrick.
Good morning. My name is Patrick Mulovi from Nairobi, Kenya. I'm an occupational physician, currently working with tea industry. For me, I'm really loving the conversation because this is part of what I really get to grapple with on a day-to-day basis. And working in agribusiness, there's a leadership wants to see in our side, they want to see shillings and cents. If I'm telling them that you need to invest in programs that impact the well-being of individuals, be it physical or psychological well-being, they're interested in seeing shillings and cents. Now the challenge, I think, is measuring the impact of well-being to the business in shillings and cents. And I think it's important for us who are interested in promoting physical and psychological well-being to get to a point where we can actually bring in the conversation. And I'm talking about bringing in the CEO, bringing in the CFO to a conversation and telling them, this is how much you're losing in shillings and cents. This is how much productivity you're losing in shillings and cents. Because when I measure the well-being of the organization, productivity has been impacted up to this extent. And if you put in initiative X or initiative Y, we are able to see a return on that investment, a real return on that investment. Theoretically, I usually say I'm looking forward to a future where, because we say health is an asset, physical, psychological, emotional well-being is an asset, but it's a balance sheet. I look forward to a future where we can actually put it in the balance sheet, alongside, assets like, buildings and vehicles and, cash. We can actually say that, the well-being of our organization this year was $1.5 billion. And this is because, we had X, Y, and Z. And we can measure that and say, oh, next year, this asset has fallen in value. What has caused the depreciation in value? And, we can start having these conversations, not as an extracurricular, for lack of a better word, not as an extracurricular activity, but as the main thing in the business. In the agribusiness, one of the biggest things is factory maintenance, equipment maintenance, and this always features in what we call the finance and operations meetings. I look forward to a future where discussions about employee well-being are going to be part of the finance and operations meeting. That matters, well-being matters, health of the employees are going to be moved to a point where, it's a C-suite discussion, rather than a HR, what is looked at as a discussion as a welfare thing. No, it's not welfare. It is a strategic decision. But that challenge comes back to us, who are constantly talking about it is important to put in well-being. We need to understand how business thinks. We need to understand what business looks for, and we need to change our tact. We need to improve our tact to make the businesses listen to us. Thank you.
That was very powerful. Thank you so much, Patrick. I'll call in Sunita to share her thoughts. Sunita, you are on mute, so just click on unmute. Yes.
Thanks, Shivani. As I started with music, I did forget to introduce myself. I'm Sunita Bhuya. I'm a practitioner of leadership, well-being, and creativity interventions through the medium of music. But basically, I'm an HR professional like most of you. Started as an HR person and had got the gift of music from my mother, who ensured that I learned the violin. And it's been more than 45 years of playing. And somehow I've been blessed to have allies and colleagues and bosses and CEOs who embrace the fact that well-being through various alternative forms of mediums is also essential for the growth of an employee. And arts can also be embedded. Learnings of arts can be embedded into the leadership essence of working together, working with differences, building trust. So that's the space that I work in. If you look at well-being as a subject or as a condition, let's look at the science of well-being, where we need to have healthy hormones in our body. Let's start with the individual. And then, of course, my colleagues here like Yoki, Sioma, as well as Helen talked about so many important organizational elements and leadership decisions and boardroom decisions that need to be taken to create the right well-being platform for an employee. But let's look at what's the science. We need these healthy hormones in our body. Endorphins is when we like what we do. So somewhere the job that we have has to be interesting, and it's not that every time someone else would make it interesting for us, right? So excitement and interest is not given to us in a platter. So very important for managers and leaders to ensure that each person in the team has something to be excited about the job content. And it's not always so flowery. You do have challenges sometimes with job content. Then there is dopamine. That's when people get immersed in what they do. Usually we associate dopamine with the creative side of things, when people are enjoying a rock concert and you're completely immersed in the music. But dopamine can also come into the body when we are really happy, enlightened, excited about what we are doing as a group with other people. So very important to have a person who's good at their job to be able to be a team person and to have those platforms made for that person by the leader. I think all the buck stops with the leader. The leader needs to understand, needs to be sensitive, needs to know that to create the right work output, to ensure that business doesn't look at well-being and employee engagement as a soft tool. Only then can we get harder results. So there is endorphins in the body, there is dopamine when you're really immersed in what we do. And then there is serotonin and oxytocin. Now, Helen talked about it. I'm sure I got the name right because I can't see the names on the screens. Who's
Yeah, I think one of
yes,
the
yes, who talked about volunteering. Now, every organization has a CSR budget, right? Has a CSR program. So, does an employee, how many employees know what community has been impacted by their CSR program? Have we gone to those communities? Have we interacted with those communities? It could be health, it could be women, it could be children, disabled, elderly, sanitation. In India, we've got these 5 large areas of volunteering, and anywhere in the world. Volunteering is not just cutting a huge check and being a philanthropist. Volunteering is sharing what we have with those who need, which means our time. So if an employee can give part of their time to a cause that's close, because it's very difficult to find causes that's around us, right? We've got to reach the community. And when we say inclusion also creates the right well-being structures. Hence, when we give to someone who needs, we build resilience, we come back to our own spaces and think, oh my God, that's a tough life that the person leads. Hence, our organization is doing the CSR. So that gives us 2 hormones of dopamine and oxytocin. So all these 4 hormones together scientifically make us feel good about ourselves because they regenerate our tired cells. That's about how scientific and how we can ourselves create those well-being hormones, healthy hormones in our body. Second is definitely how our social structures, our friendships within the organization, how do we learn from each other? The fear factor. If you're scared to say what we don't know, that organization will never have a healthy, positive environment. We've got to have managers who empower us with tools and also ensure that we have a safe environment to work. When I say safe, I just don't mean workplace harassment or sexual harassment or abuse. I mean safe to say that, I'm having a bad day, or I don't know how to put this presentation together. I need help. People may need help at every level. So that insecurity makes people very, very depressed, and it's very hard for them to come back to work the next day. And the third element is that performance. It has to be, an organization has to be performance driven, and only then can the right kind of positive environment prevail, which means very important to have a fair and square evaluation system of people's performance. Because when you're not talking about well-being outside the organization, we can go to retreats, we can go to yoga camps, and we can have a very happy family life or a personal life. But at work, fairness, getting the right opportunities, getting the right inclusive environment is very important for well-being. And last but not the least, let's get the scare of AI out of the HR and the employees. Whatever AI, if AI takes over us, it's because organizations have dehumanized the human being. It is employees' emotional intelligence that will leverage AI. This whole AI dinosaur is looming large, and people are so worried, so scared, so depressed, so anxious. It's the human being who has to use AI. And I think leaders there, the C-suite has to ensure that every person who is AI trained feels good about leveraging AI as a tool and not as something that humanity and human beings are giving themselves up and their brains are stopping to function. No way. AI has to be the leader. AI has to drive AI. And I'm sure a lot of well-being issues will be solved when we can tackle the ghost of the AI that's around us. Thank you. I have lots more to say, but I'm pausing here.
Yeah, no, we'll continue. Of course, we also have to get our points across really fast because, we're also dealing with an audience that can't have a high attention span. Okay, so, really interesting thoughts, right? I do want to come back to Helen. Do you think that, so I mean, Helen brought up a very interesting point, which is, this whole aspect of volunteering, and volunteering doesn't really mean like you go and help a cause. Yes, that's part of it, but also like to be volunteer, like the sort of the personality, or like, what would you say, the habit, or for example, if you have to go for a training or if you want to learn a skill, then you sort of want to do that, not that you're made to do that. That's what you also mean when it comes to volunteering behavior, right? In an organization. Helen?
Yes, yes. And as you said earlier, it is often linked to CSR programs. But I think the benefit of volunteering is about us. So if you have the opportunity to volunteer for something deeply matters to you, so purpose in the workplace. The other thing is volunteer in a role to develop your skills, or you might volunteer in a role to share your skills. But the other massive benefit of volunteering is it's not really a solo sport. It's usually done in connection with other people. That might be other people in your organization or the people that you're connecting with, that you're serving and you're with. So it's about relationships. So volunteering, which might just be 2 hours a month, an opportunity to connect to your purpose, an opportunity to develop tips, and an opportunity to share your skills. So for 2 hours a month, I think that's a small investment for a massive well-being gain.
Lovely. I love the word purpose. Isioma, any thoughts on this?
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that we find at the workplace that truly drives engagement and well-being is really having a sense of direction and a sense of purpose, doing something that is higher than yourself. So when we even talk about well-being and we look at it holistically, we're not just talking about what happens in your body, but what also happens in your soul. It's not something that again, it's one of those things that we consider soft, but those are again fundamentals. And you will find that people they feel better. There are statistics to show that people actually start to recover when they find that there is something that pulls everyone together. That sense of purpose, that sense of collaboration, that we are doing something that is not just about profits. Yeah, I think that's where I'll go with this. It's not just about profits. It's also that we are contributing to humanity. So I would absolutely agree with that that's something that organizations should critically think about in terms of well-being.
Thank you so much. So just closing this particular theme on, why is this initiated that way? I think we've come to finding purpose at work as well. So Prayag, I just wanted to understand from you that because you've worked with the maritime industry, have you seen this sort of change over the period of time as you worked with them that I'm sensing you did? I mean, I've learned a lot from you already. So
Yeah.
going from thinking about it like a profit to thinking about this like a purpose.
Absolutely. I think one of the best ways to put it is we were able to train around 2,000 plus people to do something which is aligning with exactly what we're talking, which is community. As we all know that being a seafarer is, of course, emotionally very tough, but financially you get really good paychecks, right? When you're sailing for 6 months, 7 months, and whatnot. But something that we have noticed that when people start thinking from the community perspective, when they start thinking that keeping our environment emotionally safe really makes a difference, that's when people actually you can start seeing the changes. And one of the way, yeah, like to prove this is we've trained 1,800 people as well-being champions who are trained seafarers to see and identify whether there is any emotional distress in their own colleagues who are working with them. And fortunately, we were able to save around 10 lives on board without a psychologist, because these guys were trained to identify when the crisis happened. And I think that's the power of community. That's how, get having unconditional regards for humans can do. It can save lives, even if it is one in 1 lakh. It's still a human life. So I think I totally resonate to what each and every one of you said. Over to you, Shivani.
Thank you, everybody. Lovely. So I like this. I think it's a very quick, fun takeaway from the first theme, that is going from profit to purpose, right? And you're all very responsible for bringing that into my mind. We're going to move on to our fishbowl conversation now. And I find fishbowl even more fun. But here's the prompt, and also a thinker for everybody who's watching us. And if you're really taking notes, leadership, if you're watching us, please take notes. We've got experts here. We had a very fun segment, and I'm going to try to do the same thing as the first one. We're not blaming anybody here, but we'll figure it out as we go, right? As we go. So the conversation here is now it's an open discussion. So everybody here, please share your thoughts. Where do organizational systems fail? well-being. So where's the glitch? Where's the hiccup? Where is the fail is a strong word. So I'm just trying to elaborate a little bit further. Does it fail at strategy, leadership, somebody's behavior, governance? Where does it really fail? What do we think?
I think it's strategy. I think it's strategy for sure because, like most all my esteemed colleagues mentioned, that if leadership is not planning and is not looking at the employee and the people as the key asset of the organization, and you talked about purpose filled profit with purpose, it is strategy. It has to be strategically woven into the larger mission and vision of the organization. A healthy employee is a happy employee. A happy employee is a productive employee. If people are looking at some Einstein to come and give an experiment on that, then we'll keep waiting for years to get well-being out there. But this is the narrative: healthy, happy, productive. So if you don't invest, if you look at an engagement or a well-being or a counseling session or employee group therapy as a good to have, and that we are wasting maybe some of our productive time. I'm talking about from the operations point of view, because I work for large outsourcing projects in India. It was very difficult to convince the business head that give me 1 hour on a Friday for as a part of little bit of well-being and therapy. They looked at it as recreation and entertainment and downtime. No, it is investment into the employee. The employee comes back fresh, better. It enables learning. So strategically, we've got to make employees feel that they are the assets, and we've got to invest. We've got to invest, and there has to be investing slots that employees are given, from counseling to programs to leadership insights, where how the employee feels at work is very important.
Thank you.
Agree it's strategy, but it has to be strategy that's based on the right thing. And we look at what Dr. Jeffrey Pfeffer says in his book, Dying for a Paycheck, that the two things that we need to focus on are control, how much autonomy do individuals have around their working life, and social support. So it's about relationships, how we get on with the people that we're connected with, how do we get on manager, that matters more than anything, and how much choice and control do you have in how you work. So if our strategy is based on the kind of initiatives described earlier, resilience programs, wellbeing programs, yoga at work, the evidence says they do not work. So you can have a strategy that has all of those, not make any difference at all. But if you've got a strategy that says, how do we support positive relationships at work? How do we support team leaders best in their relationships with colleagues? How do we introduce practices like team agreements, where we get clear about what's okay and not okay in how we behave together in teams? The thing that a strategy needs to be based on.
True, absolutely. Along with initiatives, team and outcomes of teamwork has to go together. I so agree with you.
I think that Helen also brought up a really nice point, which is the narrative that you have, and that sort of shifts the mindset. This how you talk about the strategy, or how you sort of package it, not in a marketing perspective, but how you package it in your own brain, in your own mind, that sort of makes you want to go for it every single day. It's the little things, and for us it seems very simple because we have seen people from an objective front, but when you're in it, when you are sort of the team member in that organization, you see things from a very different perspective. All right.
And if I could just say one.
Yes. Sorry. Please go ahead. Everybody, please talk.
Just before Omar jumps in, what could be worse than going into your workplace and think that you have conflict with the members, or believing that your line manager, your team leader doesn't really like you and is out to discredit you? Nothing other than relationships and how we can show up and acknowledge our feelings and ask for what we need and have conversations without blame. This is where there needs to be, because no wellbeing initiative is going to help you if you've got difficult relationships in the workplace.
Hi. So I would like to jump in here, and I completely agree that strategy is very important. But what I would like to add to this is really around the leadership behavior, because strategy is designed by leaders. Policies, systems are created and supported and driven by leaders. If we put in place the right strategy, but the behavior by leaders is contradictory to the strategy, then it proves a bit difficult. And people model after their leaders. We learn to be leaders by the leaders that have led us in the past. It's so there is a strong I think again, it's not about who has failed us, but it's what can we really do to support and to make sure that well-being isn't, like we said, a nice to have, but a core part of organizational strategy. But I really believe that it also depends on how leaders are leading. Leaders shape culture. Culture also shapes strategy. So we need to also hold leaders accountable. And sometimes leaders also don't know what to do. I have heard conversations, I've been part of conversations where we know that leaders need to be coached. Leaders need to be shown a different way of doing things. I have been in rooms where two leaders are talking about the same thing, the same situation, but the approach is different. I have worked with people who have really burnt out and broken down, and they talked about the role that the leader played in either helping them to support or helping them to break down. So I do think that we do need strategy. Well-being cannot be an afterthought, but strategy is created and delivered by people, and our people will follow the leader. So I think that's what I would just like to contribute to the conversation.
Thank you. I'd like to hear from Jasper. He's just joined us. And Jasper, also please tell us a little bit about yourself, because everybody also did their intros.
Right. Thank you. Great conversations around where it is. I come from a country called Uganda. It is in East Africa. And I lead team at Wellbeing. We are in power organizations work here in East Africa. Coming to the conversation, there's what I call cultural philosophy of work. My expertise has always been mainly around East Africa. And so one of the most interesting patterns that we're using here among our African leaders is that the biggest barrier to budgets is not necessarily time, because we see leaders are buying cars for their housing, medical insurance, and all these things. It's not necessarily about awareness, about how we understand work itself. From our African context, you see work presented through language of struggle, endurance, pain. And so you meet leaders who are, rising through this, through struggle, sacrifice, pain, hard work. And so time you bring a concept called well-being into their, they don't really understand you, because questions would be around, pain, through struggle, through pushing through resilience. And you see, that has become a very big barrier to well-being when it comes to, some of the work in East Africa. So well-being is still misunderstood. It is seen as a luxury. It is seen as something that you can do away with. Just imagine when you have a car, the car can still move, but so when it comes to leadership, we still need to do reorientation. How can we support people to work in the new world? How can we demand capacity from them through intention? And so for me, I see the way we think about work is still to be readjusted. That's the point for me about leadership. There is what I call leadership culture and struggle, billboard struggle. You find that my line manager has struggled to get there. And so they subject you to the same pain. They want to subject you to the same measures that they went through just to get. So when it comes to that, issues of long hours, personal struggle, their identity is like a billboard of struggle. I think my HR consultant can agree with me, a billboard of struggle. And so for them, when it comes to well-being, they see it as, it is something that I can do away with. And so our lead has to be really done about what well-being means. I think that's a contribution that I can make right now.
If you could
Thank
allow me
you.
to jump in here.
Of course, I was coming to Patrick. Yes.
Thank you. Just very, very interesting. I'm just right next door in Kenya. Let me ask you, to what extent do you think this is a hangover of colonialism? Yeah.
That's a great question. I think a conversation like this one guides whether this is something that we inherited, new work, and we must be intentional about this conversation. Because when you look at the resilience levels of our young career workers within, they're different. Different from 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And so that's why a conversation about psychological, a conversation about well-being conversations, purpose, intentionality must be discussed right now. Thank you.
Okay. Interesting, because I think your context in Uganda seems to be very similar to what we have in Kenya. What I've picked up with a number of organizations, and just looking at how businesses operate, I think something that we're really suffering from in Kenya is what I'll call impatient capital. Impatient capital. So we have venture capitalists, and some of us like to call them vulture capitalists, coming in and wanting to take an organization, and in the next 5 years, they want to have made profits, increased the equity, sell, and move on. So for them, everything is about shillings and cents. For them, it's about the net profitability, of the business, but very little real commitment to sustainability, very little commitment to developing the whole person, both physically, both mentally, emotionally, very little commitment to that. Because, if someone puts in a couple of $1 million and in 5 years they want it to double, that tells you the kind of priorities that they're likely to have. So I think that again goes back to, talk about strategy. And my question again now becomes, do we also need now policy from a very high place, from probably government, to come in and regulate and say, no, if you're coming in a venture capitalist, minimum 10 years, you can't have a 3-year turnaround. There probably needs to be, regulation that far up, because there has to be protection of the individuals, protection of workers, protection of people, and by extension, because when you protect a worker, you protect their families, you protect, their children. There has to be this protection. And I don't think even, people at the C-suite level have the capacity to protect against this, because this might be even at board level, might be even at government level. So personally, I've seen, the culture of certain organizations change with a change of ownership, simply because of what we call impatient capital. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I chip in just a minute?
Yes, of course.
All right,
Of course.
When it comes to policy governance, there's what I call blind spots. document has been done, paperwork, policies, we have them, but now what are the blind spots in this documentation that we are coming up with? And I think issues that many organizations are not paying attention to is performance and well-being. Are they still treated as every time we come to discuss about performance systems, it happens, that question happens in one well-being conversation to send it in another room, right? We treat these two important metrics separately, independently, okay? If strategy frameworks, our operational metrics are being handled, but none of them is measuring what we call a psychological sustainability. And so you get performance systems that are separate from systems, but yet our best conversation that we've been having, you find that performance is produced by human systems. So that means we must bring these conversations together. Every time we are discussing strategy, discussing performance, every time we are discussing systems that can really drive profitability, then a well conversation be embedded so that now there is harmony. These two things go together: performance, profitability, productivity, human systems. We must also think about that question. And I think that one now helps us to be able to get a front seat when a well-being around conversation is brought in. Thank you.
Wow. All right. Very deep thoughts, Okay. Thank you so much. I think that, so finally, the question is, I mean, we've talked a lot about strategy, right? Also the narrative of how we package that strategy. We've talked about where it comes from as well. I think Patrick really beautifully brought that up. Does it really come from here, come from there, come from our history, come from the way we were, sort of raised, the kind of cultures that we were exposed to, sort of so on and so forth as well. At the end of the day, we also have this, our dream. I think what we're really talking about is that to make well-being a business priority. And that's when we talk about coming into, conversations with leadership. Like Patrick said, we want the C-suite leaderships to start talking about well-being. Jasper saying that, we want it to be part of the conversations, we want it to be part of the KPI, the productivity, the performance, all of that. We want mental health and well-being, well-being overall to be a business priority. But yeah, we talked about in segment 1 as well. It looks like it could be a far-fetched dream right now. So little steps, that we could take right now is what we can do. However, I think if you all had to sort of tell me one word, that comes to your mind, because we do have about 3 minutes for this segment, and I want to sort of hear what comes to your mind. If we really had to talk about where the failure is, what would be a word that would come to your mind? Maybe it doesn't have to be part of the question I initially asked. Where is the failure? Where do you see it? Where's the hiccup? The glitch, like I keep saying, in the system.
One word from me would be understand what we need to do to improve well-being.
Understanding. So coming back to the narrative, the understanding, the clarity. All right. Yeah. Let me see if our other speakers are here as well. Just quick.
Can I jump in?
Yes, please.
I would say learning. And what I mean by that is, what do we actually do with what we are learning? I feel like COVID taught us something. COVID came and it disrupted and it changed the ways of working. But I find that we are no longer, I don't think we've taken a lot of learnings from COVID. We seem to be going back to the way things used to be at the workplace. So I would say learning. What are we taking away and how are we utilizing our learning?
Right. Understanding, learning, and how we're utilizing our learning. That seems to be where the glitch comes in. Yes. Open thoughts.
Leadership culture.
For me,
I said
Okay.
Go ahead.
That will be in form of, a question to us. You don't need to answer that, but performance be sustained without breaking the people producing it. How do we sustain performance without necessarily the people who are producing it? And so, since strategy sets demand and leadership is behavior and also governance systems, then I think we need to pay attention to this. Yeah, not pinpointing to one. Thank you.
All contribute. But lovely. What a great question to hold for our audience. The question is, how do we sustain performance without breaking the people who are actually performing? So that's a question to hold. Thank you so much. What a great question. All right. Please go ahead, Sunita. You were saying?
Yeah, like I mentioned, like I earlier said, that the strategic vision of the organization will decide how well-being is looked at, what kind of programs, and who sets the strategy. It's the leaders. Hence, their intent, their behavior, like one of my colleagues here said, their behavior and the way they ensure that people are respected, but also pushed correctly for performance. So yes, the leaders, their culture, their behavior, and their intent is going to decide the future of workplace well-being, starting with strategy that they have set for the organization.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So still on strategy, but you've added intent.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
strategy is intentional, right? When you sit together and create the values of a company, the vision, mission, and how you're going to do your strategy, it's intent. So obviously, the leaders are the ones who are driving from the top. So how they are and how they are also disseminating their values and their intent to the next level of leaders. The middle manager is who impacts the most, the larger population the most, hence leaders at all levels.
Patrick, what about you? One word or statement that comes to mind? Sorry,
Adaptability.
Jasper, you had some
Oh, sorry.
adaptability. Adaptability, yeah?
You talk about COVID and talk about pre-COVID and post-COVID. I think in the last 10 years, so much has changed in a really, really, really short time. How work is organized and our perspectives towards work and the increased awareness of the impact that mental performance and now again the realization of the connection between mental health and physical wanting towards physical health, mental health, organizational health, and overall performance who will be the buzzword in 2028. So I think adaptability is something that we must all embrace. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Prayag, over to you for any thought that comes to your mind when I say where is the failure?
I think I already answered that question. It is the experience and visibility. Humans always believed whatever they've seen. They have not believed what they have not. It's very hard to see a wound on your head and quickly take you to a doctor, but it's very hard to see somebody who's struggling and still smiling. Can be anybody who's here right now speaking about mental health but still struggling. So I think it is the visibility, and to cover that, especially in organizations, it needs to come from the top to down. And I'd like to bring in somebody who has really changed the whole idea of how maritime can also be taken into consideration of being mentally safe is Captain Uni. He's the director of Synergy now, and he brought this great approach that no matter what happens in this company, you bring any concern which is to do with mental health to me, and I'll always be the person to answer that. If the keyword is mental health, I'll type and make sure that somebody is there to support you. So we really need leaders who talk about mental health in the sense of experience, not just to preach, but they walk the talk, because it really comes from experience and the visibility, definitely. So yeah, that's 2 cents from my side. Over to you, Sharon.
Thank you, everybody. That was lovely. Jasper, you had some thoughts to share. I think it sort of popped up in your mind. Would you like to share it out before we close this segment?
What put my mind leadership in one of the conversations here in the country, public people here were condemning security forces for crime, intolerance, and so forth. And the president had to ask a question, which I think is very important. He said, "Where do security officers come from?" So every time we talk about leadership, we also need to ask ourselves, where do leaders come from? They come from us, from our systems. How come when I rise to top leadership or middle management, then I well-being? Where is the problem? Is it exactly about the leadership environment? And so I think every time we pinpoint to leadership, for me, I think when it comes to well-being, be an organizational leadership should do 5% of heavy lifting, and all the people should do 50%. Hybrid up where we do top bottom and also bottom top, and both ways have proved to work, right? People down here can also, some leadership that we. At the same time, you can also go to leadership and they don't really understand. They stifle efforts down here. So I think we have different roles and responsibilities when it comes to contributing to being organizations. Thank you.
Thank you. Yet another great statement. Why would I kick away well-being when I'm also writing or talking to middle managers and leaders, right? Yeah, perfect. Closing our lovely fishbowl conversation with all of you. Thank you so much. But stay here because we're going to be sharing our letters from the future. And here's how it's going to go. So we're just going to have each one of you coming on spotlight here. You're going to share the letter from the future. Due to time constraints, I think you might not be able to share a very lengthy letter, but let's try and keep it summarized or as short as possible. I think we've got about 2.5 minutes per person. It would be lovely to now hear from all of you. So I think we might also have some more speakers joining in for this particular segment, but we'll get started anyway. All right. Okay. So everybody's ready with their letters from the future, right? So I'm just going to portray the prompt for our audience as well to see what everybody is looking at. This is exactly what we're thinking about today. So, well, we're looking back and think about, as if imagine that we're in the year 2036 and we're now looking back and sort of sending a letter to ourselves in 2026 saying, hey, we finally learned something and, we got there. So the question is, when did leaders finally take ownership of workplace well-being? That is the letter that we're writing back to us saying, hey, yeah, they took ownership here because of so and so reasons. Very excited to hear each of your letters. I will now tag one person, spotlight, and then we move ahead from there, right? Helen, can we start with you, please?
Thank you. We find that you can't separate well-being from psychological safety, and that's one of the things I'm celebrating to you here from the future. We celebrate Australia's lead and made psychological safety having the same status as health and safety at work, because we realised that poor psychological safety costs lives in the same way that poor health and safety costs lives. And that was an amazing achievement. You should be. It's wonderful that pioneers of this in each country focused on well-being, requiring greater and from social support and relationships. And remember the Gallup question of, do you have a best friend at work? And sought to have different ways to make that happen. And it was fabulous to see the practices that the pioneers engaged right from recruitment. So practices like team agreements, where each team looked at the tensions they're experiencing the team, and from them co-created behavioral statements about how they want to, and the whole team and the team leader worked on that reality. It was these small practices that made the big difference, particularly the way that HR embedded that in recruitment. So it was wonderful to see in some pioneering countries and pioneering places that when you went for a job, it wasn't just being asked, could you do the work that was required of you? Can you show up with the team with psychological safety and uphold the team agreements that the team has? You couldn't pass probation until you demonstrated that you could support relationships and support team agreements in your team. And that was one of the really practical ways that you took this forward. I was so proud. And finally, in practice, that when you joined a new organization, in induction, you'd be taught something like called non-violent communication or compassionate communication. So you learnt about your well-being, which is identifying your feelings, being able to name them, being able to what's the story that I'm telling myself about this, and is that true? And then what do I need? So helping people identify their feelings, ask for what they need, and be able to have conversations without blame made a huge difference in the organizations that were pioneering this. So from the future, wanting to celebrate with you, putting relationships at the center of psychological safety and well-being, and in practical strategies like team agreements and embedding like recruitment and induction, so they made a powerful difference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Helen. I don't want to say anything. I want to hear each letter just smoothly as we go by. I'm now calling upon Patrick to share his letter. Thank you so much, Helen. Patrick, here you are.
Thank you. So my letter is a CFO, Chief Financial Officer, giving a financial report. So it starts, health is an asset that is now formally measured and reported in precise money terms. It has finally found its place on our balance sheet. In our current financial statements, the health of our employees is recorded in shillings and cents, material condition to organizational value. For the end, we reported a strong appreciation in the employee health asset, which has been work performance indicators. The asset opened the year at a stable base and closed at a significantly higher valuation, tilted expenditures and sustained employee engagement. Additions to the asset in the and mental health support systems. These are now treated as long-term value-generating expenses rather than improvement and higher output per employee. The board of directors and shareholders have reviewed the performance of this asset class and approved increased allocations, combined return expectations, and performance benchmark comparable to other asset classes within the organization. As asset and value of employee health within their respective units by modeling healthy behaviors and appreciation. Depreciation of the employee health asset is minimal and is based health risks such as burnout and preventable illness. However, these factors are actively mitigated through continuous marks and targeted support programs, ensure. In summary, employee health is recognized and appreciating on our balance sheet, contributing directly to resilience and long-term shareholder.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Thank you so much. Prayag, over to you.
Hey, thank you so much, Shivani. I'll keep it short as you mentioned. This is a letter from all the directors from the world in future who's clearly saying that our perspective has always been when the going get tough, the tough get going. But from now, which we've been practicing from last 10 years, it should be that when the going get tough and when you reach out, the tough get going. So the idea of reaching out has been so practiced in all the maritime organizations that we have that now everybody reaches out without thinking that it won't be a manly thing to do. So yeah, that would be the letter.
The letter is that they finally realized that. Thank you so much, Prayag. Lovely. I'll now hand it over to Isioma. Isioma, I'm pulling you in. Just give me a moment.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I wish my letter was as concise as Prag's, but I will go. I will. Without further ado, I am speaking from the future into 2026. Dear 2026, I remember you clearly. You were the time when well-being was still a conversation and not yet a commitment. When organizations said things, but systems still rewarded exhaustion. When burnout began to rear its ugly head, but we didn't call it a cry for change. We called it being committed, being resilient, doing whatever it takes. It was invincible until it became unavoidable, until it became an epidemic, and then there was an awakening. Looking back now, I realized that the question wasn't about leaders taking ownership. It was them realizing they already owned it because well-being was never a nice to have. It was always being shaped every day by leadership. In the expectations we set, the behaviors we modeled, the pressures we normalized, the boundaries we ignored, the shift didn't come from another program, it came from awareness. Leaders began to see performance and well-being never leaders began to see that performance and well-being were never opposing forces. They were deeply connected. That well-being is the foundation for sustainable performance. That the cost of sustained success can no longer be invincible, especially as we watched our teams, our brightest and strongest talents, begin to crack under the weight of unrealistic work designs and expectations. And then something deeper happened. We began to see people as human beings, not machines. Care was no longer soft, it became essential. We began to ask, how are you doing? And we meant it. And more importantly, we paused long enough to hear the answer because we had created the kind of safety where people no longer needed to pretend. The language began to change from how can you deliver to at what cost, from resilient employees to sustainable systems, from well-being initiative to well-being leaders. And leaders began to do their own work. They paused, they reflected, they let go of identities built on pressure and performance, began to lead from wholeness, and that changed everything. Leaders, because when leaders changed, systems followed. Work was redesigned, expectations were recalibrated, and conversations that were once uncomfortable became necessary. Looking back now, the shift didn't happen because organizations suddenly cared more. It happened because leaders understood something fundamental. You can't separate the success of a business from the condition of the people driving it. And once that trend undeniable, ownership flowed. So if I could say one thing to you, 2026, it will be this. The future would not be built through better programs or matcha Mondays. It will be built through leaders who choose to lead differently. Being no longer an initiative, it became the way we work. Warmly from a future where well-being is no longer an afterthought.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Isioma. You have written that from like your heart. It shows. It just shows. Thank you. I would now like to call Jasper to share his letter. And also the Matcha Mondays. What a great touch. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. I will just give the talking points in my letter just to keep time. We'll go later in our chat room. The first insight from my letter is around we misdiagnosed the problem. The first realization was burnout, disengagement, and talent loss were never isolated problems, but these was that the way we work had been was asking more from people than it could sustain performance. And so the issue was not about resilience, but it was the system's design. Insight number 2 from my letter is about we overlooked the real. Second realization was that organizations had been investing heavily in systems and infrastructure, but overlooking the most important, and this is the human infrastructure. That is the capacity, that is the cognitive capacity, the emotional resilience, the energy systems that we actually make performance possible. So organizations saw that clearly, then well-being stopped being a side initial part of how performance was built. Third insight is about leadership had to rethink the question. And it happened at the level of thinking. Dominant question used to be, how do we get more out of the people? But now the question, what do our people need to function? That and expectations. Then the last insight from my letter is around performance and well-being conversation. And so finally, organizations realized that performance and well-being could no longer exist in separate conversations. Performance is produced by human systems. So if those systems are depleted, if those systems are distracted, if systems are overwhelmed, then performance will decline. So the breakthrough was bringing both the same room where well become part of how performance is defined and also sustained. So looking back from 2035, the real question was not whether organizations should invest in well-being, but it was whether performance was ever sustainable without well-being. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll hand it over to Sunita for her letter.
Hi, my letter is not as structured as such fabulous letters that our colleagues have written, but it's from a CEO who's retired to a new CEO who's taken over the organization. So I'd say that, dear friend, I think
I think we faced a short glitch. We'll just wait for Sunita to be right back. Sunita.
Yes, so it's this is a letter from a CEO who has retired to the new CEO of the company, and the company was started and led by myself, which is I'm acting the CEO. So the letter would be to the new CEO as, dear friend, as you take on the new responsibility of being the chief executive officer of this organization, let me share with you what helped me get the company up to this level to be able to have leaders like you join us. First thing is that at every point of our leadership at the board and me as a leader, we looked at the craft and the talent of employees and individuals as a key motivator for the development. Hence, encourage the employees and your colleagues to ensure that their craft, their talent, their skills are at the core of what they do in the organization. That's going to make them different and make them unique in their performance in the organization. And that's going to ensure that they have self-esteem and come back to work every day excited. Second is that, I ensure that I encourage the concept of collaboration, not just between team members, but also cross-functionally, to know what's happening across the organization, so that when you walk into an organization, you're comfortable, you know what the various stakeholders, who the various stakeholders are, and how they are developing and taking the organization to the next level. Third, we come towards how we directly impact well-being as a leader, is that respect every team member that is there in the team. Because remember, your hiring manager has hired every person. So it's very important for us to ensure that we respect differences, synergize the team with those differences, spend that time with every team member and understand their triggers, what motivates them, and helps them work towards the larger goal. Hence, profit and purpose comes in here. As a leader, you've got to encourage that culture. Fourth, very important when we come to the physical part of the science of health and well-being. Remember, the mind and the body is not separate. Hence, let's ensure that we maintain discipline, we maintain our sleep. Every time, well-being cannot be just something that the organization is giving to you. You've got to be responsible for the well-being of yourself and your team members. And health, nutrition, diet, exercise, all that is what you've got to find time for to come back to work and fight what's everyday stress and all that comes with a growing organization. Last but not the least, kindness and humanity has to be the key element. However, not without being fair and crediting performance always. Understand the organization runs because you've got domain experts and people who are working towards a larger goal, which is a business. It's not a not-for-profit. It's not a charitable organization. It's a business. Hence, to be fair towards performance, and if you create a very great performance management culture, which is fair with leaders spending time to coach and develop their team members towards the larger goal, that's what's going to make the organization a great place to be. So kindness and humanity, very important. Very important to be soft when required and sensitive, but we've got to ensure that we are fair towards good performance and we coach people correctly. And at the end, like Tagore said, when you have no one to walk with you, life doesn't have your leaders, your family, your friends always. Our well-being sometimes is our responsibility. We've got to walk alone. And Tagore said, when there's no one to walk with you, you've got to walk alone. Jodi তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে তবে একলা চলো একলা চলো একলা চলো একলা চলো রে যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে. Towards your goal, we've got to walk alone at times, on our own with our mission. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sunita. Again, very wonderful to always have a lovely start of the segment with music and also end. I love your voice. It's so amazing. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your letters. So here's what we're going to do next as we come to the end of our block 2. I can't believe we've already finished 2 sets of segments today. As happy as I am, I also feel a little sad when it comes to an end because all this learning then stops. But so what we're going to do for the end of this segment is I invite all of you, all of my speakers here. You're going to do a real-time reflection. So that means we don't have cameras on, you're not live or anything like that. You're going to sit down with your thoughts, get your pen or paper out or your phone, wherever you're comfortable with. Please write down what you have processed as of the last 1.5 hour, 1 hour, 40 minutes that we've spent together, because a lot has been shared, a lot has been felt, and a lot of thoughts have come for us. So please write that down, gather your thoughts, gather yourself, and then we'll come back in about 5 minutes, just like a group, and we'll do a quick sharing round. Yes, all right. So I'll see you all in about 5 minutes.
Don't you stay? The stars they glimmer, speak of pain. Each grain of sand knows my name. Can you hear it? The voice within, a song of love. Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. The gurus chime a distant call. Her anklets sing, rise, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. Can you hear it, the voice within? A song of loss where love begins. Her anklets sing a poem from silence deep. New ones are born. Peacocks cry in the storm's embrace. Clouds that gather leave no trace. Dreams like bangles shattered, worn from silence deep. New ones are born. A thousand doomsday shift, they sway the wind. Whispers, don't you stay. A count shadows stretched so long. Footsteps fade, where do I belong? Oh, heart of my mind, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. The cuckoo's chime a distant call. Her anklets sing, rise, don't you stay. The stars they glimmer, speak of pain. Each grain of sand, it knows my name. Can you hear it, the voice within? A song of loss where love begins. Heart of my mind, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. Heart of mine, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. The gurus chime a distant call. Her anklets sing, rise, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. Can you hear it, the voice within? A song of loss where love begins. Her anklets sing a poem from silence deep. New ones are born.
Hello, everyone. We are back for the last part of our segment, that is the reflection round from everybody who spoke here. This is called From Insight to Intention, intent being a very key word that one of our speakers brought up earlier. More than what leadership behaviors need to change, I think that we could stick to what behaviors really need to change and what action can we all take from everything that we spoke about overall. Because I really like the point Jasper brought up earlier, and he did say that would I really throw away well-being if I'm talking to leadership? Because then that would not be fair. So overall, what behaviors do we really think that we need to change when it comes to workplace well-being is what we're going to be sort of reflecting on as our final segment space. Pulling in our speakers and members. Here we go. Requesting all of you to keep your cameras on so that when I get you in, then you can see your faces. I hope you had a lovely grounding. You were able to gather your thoughts, and I am looking forward to hearing them structured, if I may. All right, here we go. Everybody's here. Perfect. All right. Please keep your cameras on so that you can be visible when I add you into the session. Perfect. Okay, let's hear it. So let's hear your thoughts from today. We've spent about 1 hour 45 minutes together today. All right. Helen?
I'm going to quote Jasper as well. I think the most significant thing for me is performance and well-being being one conversation. So the behaviour that I suggest that we change is in supervision or one-to-ones, that we're asking two questions. How are you doing in delivering your role? And can you give me, and how are you doing in creating psychological safety in your team and promoting well-being? And can you give me examples of that? And if we move towards that kind of approach, it would mean that you couldn't be promoted as an organisation unless you could demonstrate that you were both delivering fabulously in your role and actively supporting psychological safety and well-being. So that's the biggest change for me. I was also, so people are interested in how feeling like you matter is absolutely central to well-being. I would recommend The Power of Mattering by Zach Mercurio, and also hard on the heels of that, Happiness is a Serious Business by Nick Marks. Thank you, and it's been an absolute pleasure and privilege to have been part of that today.
Thank you. Sioma?
Hi, yes, I'm going to keep mine as short as possible. So, again, it boils down to leadership behaviors. And one of the things that I have been really reflecting on is what we reward. We reward things like, when we say things like, I know how to work under pressure, I know how to deliver under pressure. I burnt the midnight candle to deliver on these results. And those behaviors are rewarded. We normalize those behaviors, we celebrate them, we call them, we say it's loyalty, we say it's commitment. But one of the things that leaders need to revisit is, what are we rewarding? So when we even talk about the conversation on performance management, it's not just about the metrics. What did you deliver? But more, how did you deliver those results? We need to start having conversations on how did you deliver those results. When we say the pace of work, I work for a very fast-paced organization. The question is, what is the impact? And the more that we say these things, the more we celebrate it, the more our people feel this is the way they need to show up. So there has to be a mindset shift on the way that leaders see the way work is designed, the way work is delivered, and the how of the how it is delivered. So I think I'll leave it at that. So if I were to summarize, I would say leaders need to, first of all, the mindset, we need to shift from purely performance-based results, but how those results are delivered. And we've been talking a lot about psychological safety, but really opening up the space for people to feel comfortable about having conversations they would not normally have. It's not about, we should be able to, what we measure matters, but we need to be able to we need to be certain about how are we measuring those things? How are we getting those results? So I would leave it at that. I think if there's something leaders should change, it is that. That would be it for me.
Thank you. Patrick, please go ahead.
Thank you. All this is that psychological safety is key, and psychological safety is different in different contexts, different cultures, different types of workers, and leaders need to develop awareness as far as psychological safety is, and not only for themselves but also reflect it for their teams. Then I'll also quote a great person called Isioma. Leaders change, then systems can improve. So if something that has come up, being has to see is being an initiative, and it needs to become how we work. I think I'll definitely start practice is to psychological to help them improve. I don't know whether there's a quotient, psychological safety quotient. Maybe we can come up with that. Help them improve awareness of psychological safety, such that it's not just issue, but also it can become a bottom issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jasper?
Thank you. So I have only 3 points from insight to intention. The first point, 5 performance is to us. Are we going to limit it to only output alone, gets deadlines, delivery, or we are also going to move ahead and say we need to talk about the conditions that make that output possible? For me, I find that very, 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 very important. Instead of only saying what are we delivering, can we also say at what human cost are we delivering that output? Point number 2, we need to bring well-being into core decision making. That means that well-being has to show up in our everyday culture. That is how work is structured, and also how teams are resourced, and also looking at how leaders behave under pressure. So well be part of the culture. And my leadership capacity for human systems. There's what we call the leadership skill. Might be demanding what they cannot reproduce, right? Is it a skills gap? So that means that leaders, they have to add what we call human energy. They must understand cognitive load. They must understand, and they must also understand what drives performance in a long term. For me, those are my great 3 takeaways. Yes, so that we move from extract the people, we begin designing systems where people can sustain.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you to all of you and Prayag and Sunita as well for being here for this lovely segment. Every segment teaches me something new. And honestly, I think those 5 minutes were not enough for me. I think I'm going to have to take another sort of half an hour to sort of process everything that we've talked about in the beginning until now. So thank you, all of you. And again, for our audience, I'd like to reiterate the fact that the members that we have invited here for this Global Workplace Wellbeing Summit are not just speakers. They're not just people here who are great with communication. They are individuals who have taken charge. They have learned on the way and experienced so many different things when it comes to workplace well-being. What's working, what's not working, what are the glitches, what are the hiccups, all of those things they have learned and they've experienced. And here is just a platform where they're sort of sharing what their journey has been through and through. So, we've got a team of, like I kept saying, action takers, change makers. Prayag brought up a really good word, which is a catalyst, team of catalysts. And I think that's what we are. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. And hopefully, we will speak to you again. But before you go, I think let's give a quick book recommendation for those who have particular recommendation for our audience here. And I also looked at the chat. I think our audience has also tried to interact. So I'll go through some of those after you've done your book recommendations to end the segment. Is there a book that you would like to recommend? Yes, please.
Yes. There's a book I would recommend is The Body Keeps Score, Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma. I think it's an excellent book. I would recommend it to everyone, to leaders, to everyone, essentially. Yeah.
I love that book. I love Body Keeps. I love it. It's so good. All right. Helen, I think you had a recommendation as well.
Yes, I cheekily had two. One is Zach Mercurio's The Power of Mattering, about how as leaders we can make sure everybody feels that they matter. And the other one is Happiness is a Serious Business by Nick Marks, Happiness and Wellbeing. And he's got some practical strategy for addressing that. I love both of them. Thank you.
Lovely. Jasper, please tell us about your book. You've recommended a book as well.
My book recommend would be Begin With You. That is Verzobor. It talks about that well-being begins with you, not the other person, but it begins. And she also has one more that we call Digital Well-being. Digital well-being is now another thing that we need to talk about. So I would also recommend that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Lovely. Okay, great. Just a quick, I think our audience, of course, has been trying to interact with us. So they've got a few thoughts. We've got Sharon saying, you're right, Isioma. Leaders not only are accountable for team performance, but also their well-being. Audience has shared their takeaways with us. Bunmi Pratt says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Love it. To the employee who is on the lowest rung of the chain, strategy means what they see their leaders do. Modeling is what we talked about. Swasti says, we opened our doors at home for our offices during COVID, and now that we're walking out of those homes to go to our offices, we forget to shut the home door behind us, carrying our office back home, leaving no space for self and things that matter, our emotional values that need to be nurtured within the confines of our homes. Thank you. Leticia, final one, says that's such a heartfelt and beautiful letter. This is for Isioma. It's so true. You can't separate the success of the business from the condition of the people driving it. These comments are on our LinkedIn pages. So I think we can go back and sort of reread them. Thank you everyone for interacting with us. And again, thank you to all of you for coming in and making time today. Speak to you soon and let's keep in touch. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Nice conversations.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I need to touch base with you. What's your name again?
Dreams like bangles shattered, worn from silence deep, new ones are born. Doomsday shift, I sway the wind. Whispers, don't you stay. A count shadows stretched so long. Footsteps fade, where do I belong? Oh, heart of my mind, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. you hear it, the voice within? A song of loss where love begins. Heart of my mind, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. Heart of mine, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. The gurus chime a distant call. Her anklets sing, rise, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. Can you hear it, the voice within? A song of loss where love begins. Her anklets sing a poem from silence deep. New ones are born. Peacocks cry in the storm's embrace. Clouds that gather leave no trace. Dreams like bangles shattered, worn from silence deep. New ones are born. A thousand doomsday shift, I sway the wind. Whispers, don't you stay. A count shadows stretched so long. Footsteps fade, where do I belong? Oh, heart of my mind, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. The cuckoo's chime a distant call. Her anklets sing, rise, don't you stay. The stars they glimmer, speak of pain. Each grain of sand knows my name. Can you hear it, the voice within? A song of loss where love begins. Heart of my mind, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. Heart of mine, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. The gurus chime a distant call. Her anklets sing, rise, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. Can you hear it, the voice within? A song of loss where love begins. Her anklets sing a poem from silence deep. New ones are born. Peacocks cry in the storm's embrace. Clouds that gather leave no trace. Dreams like bangles shattered, worn from silence deep. New ones are born.